Hello everyone, and welcome to this live presentation titled OPC Security Gateway. My name is Randy, and I am the presenter today. Once again, this webinar is titled OPC Security Gateway. We'll talk about the OPC security challenge we have as an industry. We'll talk about what an OPC security gateway is supposed to do. I'll show you specifically the OPC Expert Security Gateway. There are other gateways, of course. This is just one. I'll show you the architecture, and then I'll show you a demonstration of what to expect from these gateways. At the end, as I promised, I'm going to let you know exactly how to be able to get a copy of this webinar recording. Spoiler alert, we're actually going to send it to you, of course. Okay, so what are we talking about here? As we know, we want information in our client applications right here on this PC. Of course, it can be on the same PC. We want to get it from these controllers right over here. Now, we're going to have our gateway right here. We'll bring in the information using OPC, just like this, and we will send it to the client application. And so we'll set up the communication first, and then we'll set up the security and block communication. And I'll show you how to do that. See the difference between having a connection and not having a connection. What security challenge are we working with here as an industry? Well, your typical vendors provide really the very, very basic security. What does this mean in practice? It means that only connection security is available. As I said, very, very basic, meaning you can connect or you can't. It's possible for you to connect or it's not possible. And if it's not possible, you can't do anything. And if it is possible, you can do everything. In other words, they don't give you read-write restrictions. They don't give you access control list restrictions. You can't get to anything. Nothing more than just the typical connection. I mean, the actual connection, which means you can either connect or you can't. Now, in addition to this, the typical integrator receives on-the-job training, or meaning no training at all. So you are, they don't really understand the security. Their biggest problem, their biggest challenge is actually getting that initial connection in the first place. Now, I'll just put in a plug for our training because, as you know, OPC Training Institute, we provide training on OPC, and that's exactly what we do. We show people how to get OPC connections working. So we show you exactly how to make the connection and also how to make it secure with whatever security features are available from the servers. But that's beside the point. Usually, people don't receive any kind of formal training. Also, with OPC UA, what you typically notice is they set the connections to none, meaning really there is no security here. And in OPC Classic, we see that connections are open to everyone. That means everyone can connect. Again, doesn't necessarily have to be this way. It's just an observation for what we typically see in plants. Of course, the plants will go much farther, but typically we see a connection OPC Classic to everyone, and in OPC UA we see the connections are set to none, which we'll see right away. Also, the typical user, they don't do audits, so they don't audit their systems. So as a result, they don't know that the security isn't there. So they're really unaware of the security deficiencies, which in my opinion is more dangerous than people knowing their system isn't secure. In this case, they think it's secure, but it really isn't. And of course, because people don't do audits, they don't know. Again, we do audits, so this is the type of stuff that I see on a regular basis. So let's talk about the security gateway. So the idea is, instead of just connecting client directly to the server, we have a security gateway here. So you don't let people connect directly to your server, you put them through a security gateway. And in previous webinars, we already showed this middleware, this gateway for OPC to MQTT, to Excel, to tunneling, trending. The last webinar was actually on REST API, so we've seen that. So in other words, OPC DA or UA coming in, REST API coming out. So you can connect to, for example, your mobile application. So we've seen the idea of the middleware or the gateway before. And by the way, folks, please keep your questions coming. Oh, and for those that are late, I see a few questions on that. Again, we will be sending a copy of the webinar. Okay, so as far as the security gateway, it actually provides the barrier, right? So in other words, this one here provides security that this one cannot provide. So if I want to block browsing, but I want to allow reading, that's what this thing does. That's just as an example. Or if I don't want to give connection to some, but I do want to give connection to others, again, that's what this gateway does. It's very, very configurable. It's very easy to learn. It's aimed at people with no security experience, and it fills those security gaps that we have with vendor OPC servers. So you can always, doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter at all what OPC server you have here and what its capabilities are. This security gateway augments everything that's done by the server. So specifically with this OPC Expert Security Gateway, again, it provides the security. It uses OPC security or Windows security to connect to the server. So those aren't gone at all. The security that's provided is on top of whatever security is provided here. So what it means is for Windows Workstation, works on Windows XP all the way to Windows 11, and on Windows 2003 all the way to Windows 2022. So from very old to very recent. So it works on all of them, and it supports OPC UA as well as OPC Classic, and it runs as a Windows service. And obviously in automation, we want these applications to run as a service because no logon is required, and as a result, it always runs. It starts with Windows, and Windows can manage the running for the user. Now, what this gateway does is it manages all the OPC server encryption, the access control list, the connections themselves. It manages all the security for the one or more OPC servers you're connecting to, and using only one port. So very, very firewall friendly, using only one port. You can connect to it with OPC UA. You can connect if you're going to do REST API, for example. You can connect with HTTP or HTTPS. So really, there's only one port that's necessary. Now, the architecture is pretty simple. It works like this. So the OPC servers are connected to the gateway. So, of course, they're connected via OPC or whatever you happen to use. So they're connected to the gateway. Now, from there, we send information to the OPC UA client. So this is a third-party OPC UA client. It might come to this gateway via OPC UA. If you have an OPC DA client, so if you have an OPC DA client, you put it through another gateway over here, you effectively tunnel, and you go through OPC UA. Now this guy has an idea exactly what the certificate is directly from here. So kind of cool. It's also doing tunneling. That's actually built in. It's embedded. You can go in with REST API on your mobile phone, on your mobile apps, or you can come in with REST API to other operating systems. Now, of course, with OPC DA, we're always talking about Windows. We know that. But with OPC UA, this can be on any operating system. This, of course, can be any operating system, Android or iOS. We saw that actually in the previous webinar. And if you're coming in with, say, REST API using Python or Java like this, you can have this on Linux, for example, or, again, any operating system you want. It's completely agnostic to the operating system. So you can come in like this, and OPC Expert uses a certificate for you. So pretty neat stuff. So what I'll do is I will show you this. very specifically, again, what we want to see is we have a client application right over here. We've got the two PLCs or DCSs or whatever controller you have. And of course, this is on, I'll use a PC in my example. Here's OPC Expert, the gateway. So first thing is we'll acquire data, just as you see here via OPC. We'll send it to the application. Okay, so again, the very first thing we want to do is to set up the communication. So first, we won't put up any security. We'll just make sure the client can connect to the servers, just like this. Then we'll apply the security to block the communication. So you'll see security working under some circumstances, but not others. Now, Tibaru, you're asking if you need the gateway if the server offers the security setting. Absolutely not. There is no need for a security gateway if your OPC server, now it's important you guys understand this. It's important to understand there's no need for the gateway here, as an example, if your OPC servers already provide the security features we're talking about, which is the ability to browse connections or allow connection, but reject browsing, or allow the connection and reject reading or reject writing. So we're going to see that, and that's really what's missing in most OPC services, the ability to go any farther than you can connect or not. So that's what we're going to see. Okay, so we'll do the setup. We'll set up the communication, and then we'll block it. So we're going to have a demo on this. So let's go take a look. So I've got a couple of computers here. You will have OPC Expert running on one of them over here. And as soon as my Windows decides it wants to give me a connection, here we go. Now, just to show you what we're talking about here, once again, so here's the, I'll just leave this up. Okay, so this will be OPC 01 over here, and this is OPC 02, and I'll point that out. So there is my OPC 01, and it is this computer right here. That's where I'm going to run the gateway. I'll move it out of the way shortly. So here, I'm going to go to, before I run OPC Expert, I'm going to use UA Expert as a client. So I'll connect to it from another computer. I also have UA Expert over here. So just before I run anything, I want to show you that when you download OPC Expert, really what you're getting is just this one executable. So when you run it, it actually extracts all the files it needs, and here it is running right now. Now, what I will also do in this case, there's Windows Explorer showing you it's extracted all the files. I'll make this bigger. In this case, we're not going to be subscribing to data, so I'm really just interested in the tree. And I'll show the, there's Task Manager. Okay, so OPC Expert is working right here. OPC Expert.exe is this, the GUI. OPC Expert System Tray is optional, of course. It's down here on the system tray. Okay, now what you notice is that we do not have OPC Expert UA server. We'll see that in a bit. So the first thing I want to do is run OPC Expert. So I want to run this, make sure it's running as a Windows service. So let's go do that. So to run it as a service, I go to Tools, Options, Services and Servers. and I will select service. Nice and easy. So select service and click OK. OPC Expert automatically sets up the service. So here, there's OPC Expert UA server running as a system account. Here it is. Perfect. So it's running as a service, and that's really all it takes to do this. Okay. There's OPC Expert right there. And we can see our sample server right over there. So that's the sample server. That's the UA sample server. That's this one right here. It comes from OPC Foundation. And we see a bunch of OPC data access servers. Okay, so we see this. Now what we'll do, I'll just make it a bit smaller. So we are in the map here, we're on this PC. Now we're going to go to this PC right over here. We'll go to OPC 02. And I've colored them a little bit differently, just so it's easier. The background is a slightly different color. So you can easily see which computer is which. So there's OPC 01, there's OPC 02. So slightly different color. Okay, so here we go. So in here, I will start up UA Expert. When it starts up, it wants us to put in the security, its certificate. I'll say OK. Here we go. And I will add a new connection. Okay, so we'll go to OPC 01. This guy likes to wait a bit before it makes that connection. So we just have to wait a moment. Here we go. Yes. Now, what you notice, the first thing you notice is by default, OPC Expert enables everybody to connect. So what we can see are these endpoints. So we can see none, basic 256, 128, and so on. So what I'll do is I'll select the most secure mechanism right over here. And I will click OK. Oh, thank you. It's already there. And I will trust the certificate. This is trusting OPC Expert certificate. And here we go. So I'm able to connect, as you can see here. And I can browse. Now remember, I didn't put in any security. And so you can see I can go into OPC 01. That's this computer right here. Here we go. I'll connect to the Iconic server. I'll connect to a couple of items, just like this. You can see stuff in a different folder. And I will also connect to this guy over here, which is the OPC Foundation. It's a demo server. If anybody needs any of these, any of this software, we can, of course, send it to you. So here we can see a couple of values coming in from the server. So we've got values coming from OPC DA, and at the same time, values coming from OPC UA. And one thing that's a little bit subtle here that you can see is that OPC Expert, in this case, also acts as a converter. These values are coming in from OPC DA. OPC Expert converts them to UA, and that's why UA Expert is actually able to get all of these values. Okay, so now we can see we have a connection. So what I'll do now is put in the security. So go back here. Okay. Now you can see, I'll put this up here. Actually, we'll do this because really all we need to see is that we're getting data. You can see the data is changing in there. Okay, so as a client, we're not going to make any changes in here. All we're looking for is that we can see that the data is changing. Okay. In here, what I will do now is put in the security. So to put in the security, so you can see I'm just going to connect to the server. There we go. And you can see there's OPC 01. I'm connecting. Anthony, what you're asking is with OPC, does it need to work with OPC Classic, OPC DA? Anthony, what you're asking is if you're connected to a DA server, this is DA between OPC Expert and this guy, but it's UA right over here. It's UA right over here. Okay, so let's go to the computer. We'll go right click and we'll say security. Oh, before I do that, okay, there's a client right over here. Right click and go to security. Now you can see already the connections. There are all of these connections. I'm interested in security now. So I will remove this one, remove none, remove 128, remove basic 256. I'll just leave 2. And I'm leaving 2 just so you see that there really are 2. Now you notice the process ID is 7020. Haven't made any changes yet. In this case, we're going to reject new certificates. So we're rejecting new certificates. You can see there's the OPC Expert certificate. So we'll just reject new certificates. And user accounts and so on over here. We'll get to that in a bit. So we'll say, okay, notice the process ID is 7020. As soon as I click OK, OPC Expert, and just to show you, the service closed and now it's 1060. And when we look over here, this one over here is not able to connect. You can see it's red. See, it's red. It is not able to connect. Why? Because it's being rejected. Well, let's go see what's going on here. I'll start the GUI again so I can do the configuration. Oh, it would be helpful if I actually double click. There we go. Okay, so there is our server. We'll go to data pool. OPC 01, of course, we can browse anything we want. And remember, we rejected the certificates. So over here, we'll go to security, certificates, and there is the UA Expert certificate coming from OPC 02. So here, what I want to do is select it. You can see it's rejected. So I'll select it and I will trust. And now that it's trusted, look at this. This guy is suddenly connected. Hopefully this is making sense. I trusted it. So the connection is allowed through. So I can very, very easily trust certificates or reject certificates. Keep in mind, all we're talking about here is just for the connection. Now, what that means is I trusted that certificate. What it means is that, second here, there we go. So in here, for example, I did not trust this certificate. There it is. OPC expert, UA server. You notice, by the way, that there are only 2 endpoints because I disabled the other endpoints. I'll connect with basic 256. We'll click OK. OK. I will trust the certificate, but you can see that I cannot connect. I am not able to connect. And the reason I can't connect is because OPC expert would have rejected this certificate. I go to security. There it is. The certificate is rejected. This is the certificate. You can see it's rejected. And this is the certificate from the local UA expert. So I'm allowing something, I'm trusting, and I'm rejecting. Okay, now let's go to users and groups. And I will add a new user. I'll make an OPC user account. You can, of course, use Windows user account or a combination of these. We'll click OK. And I will add a brand new user. So I'll add myself. And I'll give myself, I'm just giving password of 1. So it's not secure. Yes, I know passwords have to be very long. I'll just say here. So I'll put in a description. You don't have to, but just so you see where it goes. Aha, there's a description. Okay, so here, there's already anonymous built in, so you don't have to create it. And we'll say OK. All right, so now what I'll do is I will reject by default. So we will reject by default, but Randy will be allowed to connect, browse, read, and write. And we'll say, okay, now keep in mind, we're adding a new user, so you can see the process ID is 1060. We'll click OK. And OPC Expert UA Server automatically restarts to reset that connection. You got to reset that connection. Otherwise, existing connections won't be disallowed. And here, what we see is, remember the user was Randy. So we see suddenly there is no connection. Why is there no connection? Because, so I will disconnect. And we'll go to properties, because in this case, this one is coming in as anonymous. What that means is we need to go with a username. I'll go in with Randy. Now you notice I've got a capital A here, which is not the way I spelled it on the other computer. I will connect. I'll put in a password of 1. And we can't connect. Why? Because the username is incorrect. It's case sensitive. So I put in a lowercase a Randy. That's exactly the way I put it into the other computer. I'll click OK. Right click, connect, put in 1 for the password. And now we can get at these values. Folks, is this making sense? We're actually adding a specific user account. So what you can see is that we can connect with one user, same certificate, but we're connecting with one user, but not another. So we're blocking based on user accounts. Now, if I want, I can even go farther. Watch this. I can go to, so here we go. We are here. Okay, how should I show this? Yeah, this will be easier. So I will close this. And I will start it again. We'll browse. So here we go. Okay, so I'll go in with the username. Randy. And the only reason I'm not storing my password is so it's very obvious, that I am putting in a password. That's really the only reason. Okay, now in here, what I will do is right-click, security. We are rejecting by default. In fact, what I'll do, I'll remove this. And just a moment here. Okay, remember OPC Expert, the server restarted. And I'll just say Iconics. And this time I'll open this up. I'll go to numeric. And what I'll do is right click numeric and go to security. And we'll say add user account. We'll say Randy. Remember the password is 1. And I will say that Randy's allowed to connect, browse, read, write. So that's actually only allowed on this folder. Okay. So now, if I say the username is Randy, but I'll put in a different password, obviously a different password, I'll click OK. This is not going to work. It's rejected. Username not allowed. Make this a bit more obvious. Connect. But if I put in the right password, I'm able to connect. Now, what I can see is the stuff that is above the server. You see, but only the one server appears. So what I don't see are these other servers. So in here, I don't see these other servers because it's all rejected. When I look at this, I'm only going to see numeric, which is what I provided access to. I'm not going to see textual and logical or any items in there. See that? Only numeric. And here are the values. So I'm now blocked from doing anything else, right? So I can really I can even allow only browsing, but not, only maybe reading and writing, but not browsing. I've got I've got an ability to do this on a very, very granular level. Okay, so I think that gives you the idea here of what that security is. Not sure if you've ever seen that with OPC servers. Could every OPC server have this? Absolutely. But it just so happens that the vendors don't actually provide it. So if that's what you need, you can use that security gateway. So once again, what we did is able to connect with the client to everything down here. And so we set up the communication and then we blocked the communication so that you can see that you can only get access to a subset of the information that we want to get to. Hopefully that is making sense, and that pretty much ends the formal part, the demonstration of the security gateway. Now keep in mind, I'll answer your questions that I didn't answer at the end of the webinar. Let me just say a few more words here. To get automated troubleshooting, you can download OPC Rescue or you can download OPC Expert. These are free to download. Anybody that needs any of the software we have here, we can provide it to you. There is no cost whatsoever. So you can download all of this. With OPC Expert, you can friend, you can bridge, tunnel, secure. So in other words, you can make your communication secure. The security portion is what we actually saw here. And we also saw the conversion from OPC UA to DA, OPC DA to UA. We just saw that right here. the Excel connectivity, we've seen that before. Again, in this particular webinar, we talked about the security, and we showed how OPC Expert enables you to convert and to make the communication secure. Now, for classes, for hands-on classes, and guys, I'll get back to the webinar right away here. I just got to put in a plug for the people who pay my my paycheck. So for hands-on learning, you can earn your certified OPC professional designation with our training, which is completely vendor neutral. You can attend one of our hands-on OPC workshops where you learn how to configure DCOM and OPC UA. We show you exactly how to set up and deploy the security that we've just seen, also with other servers. So you see exactly how to do that with the certificates, usernames and passwords. Pretty cool stuff. You learn to troubleshoot OPC systems, learn how to apply that security properly, and really learn OPC best practices. You do get 2 computers, actually, which is really cool. You configure them yourself. You troubleshoot the problems. You fix it. We break it. You fix it. We break it. You fix it. So it's back and forth. And so you actually understand exactly what's going on. So these workshops, all the workshops are interactive, they're live, and they're all remote. So there's no travel involved. Very important these days. Of course, we do have in-person classes too. But if you want, there is no travel. This is not recorded. It's a live instructor. No, it's not recorded. We have public classes, and we also have private classes if you need one for your organization. And of course, we also have in-person classes, or we fly out to you. If you want to take a look at the dates, have a look at opcti.com. All right. So, folks, this is the end of the formal part of the webinar. I'll just say a few more words for those who need to leave now, and I'll return to answer, to provide you some answers for the questions you asked. I really hope you found this webinar valuable, so please come back to our website and look for other webinars at opcti.com. Now, we're going to send you a follow-up email with the webinar recording, and we will also send you a link to download OPC Expert so you can try this yourself, and also an invitation to the next webinar that's titled OPC Calculations, which was originally supposed to be in September, but we moved it because people kept asking about the security, so we decided to move security up. So next month, we'll have a webinar on OPC Calculations. You'll learn how to create calculations using one or more OPC items. And of course, no programming is involved.